Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Marcos. I'm a student athlete studying EECS at Berkeley. And in today's 5-Minute Friday, I'm going to be explaining all the topics I've learned in my freshman year of EECS, hopefully in under 5 minutes. So the numbers are, I took around 10 classes, varying different subjects and topics. And there were a total of 14 classes per semester, 20 hours of pure classes a week. On top of that, I was also on the swim team, so that's around 20 hours of practice a week as well. So in the first semester, I took CS61A, the introductory course on computer science. Even though it is introductory, it wasn't really introductory. It went fast and the content was very challenging, probably the hardest class I have ever taken up to that point. Granted, I did not have any prior programming experience. It was a very big class, around 2,000 people, and we were introduced to Python programming language. So we started off with functions, environments, and iterations before going into our first midterm, barely 2 weeks in. Yeah, I said it was fast. But after the first midterm, we went straight into recursion, trees, containers, data abstractions, iterators, inheritance, immutable values, and functions, objects, and efficiency. And then finally, we learned a bit about SQL and scheme. Don't bother asking what scheme is, nobody knows, nobody cares. So we also had 4 projects. The first one was the game of Hog, a 2-player dice game where each person on their turn rolls a fair 6-sided die and the first person to reach 100 points wins. Of course, there were other rules in the middle to spice up the game. The second one was called Cats, which was essentially a typing simulator. The third one was called Ants, a game very similar to Plants vs. Zombies, but instead of plants we had ants, and instead of zombies we had bees, because bees attack plants. And lastly, we implemented an interpreter to interpret the scheme language. Again, don't bother asking what scheme language is, because nobody really cares. Okay, next class, History 7A, the introduction to the history of the United States until Civil War. I didn't take any APs because I took the IB curriculum, but I've told this is very similar to APUSH, so I don't think I'm going to explain that very much. I just had to take it because I had to fulfill the American culture's requirement. So on to the next class. Math 53, Multivariable Calculus. So this is the last required calculus for the EECS requirement. I fulfilled the other math classes with IB Math high level, thank God, because I do not want to do any more calculus. So we started off with parametric equations and polar coordinates, and then went into vectors and the geometry of space. And then vector functions and partial derivatives. And then the main part of this course was the next 2 topics, multiple integrals and vector calculus. So we learned about double, triple integrals, directional derivatives, Lagrange multipliers, divergence theorem, and Stokes and Green's theorem. So on to the next semester. CS61B, data structures. So as for content, we started off with values and containers, and pointer manipulations and arrays, and then we went into object-oriented programming, or OOP. Before the first midterm, we squeezed in a project, Signpost, a board game where you had to connect the starting point to an end point and all the other squares in between, only following the arrows that indicated. We continued with collections, sequences, trees and game trees, priority queues, hashing, and sorting before we had our second midterm. During that time, we also had 2 projects. So the first one was Enigma, where we implemented a simpler version of the Enigma encryption machine from World War II. And the second one was Lines of Action, so a checkers-like game where the goal is to get all of one's pieces into one group of pieces that are connected. You can only move your pieces, the number of pieces, so this is a bit confusing. You can only move your piece the number of places as pieces in the direction in front and behind the piece you want to move. If you didn't understand that, it's okay, I took a while as well. Lastly, we continue with more sorting, balanced search structures, graphs, and threads with our last final project, GitLib. GitLib was the biggest project I've ever done in my time here and Berkeley so far, and the only one where we were given a completely blank file. Essentially, GitLib is a simplified version of Git, a version control system. It was a huge project, like 1,000+ lines. The next class was EE16A, Designing Information Devices and Systems. 1. It was probably my least favorite class till now, well, before history, though I know some people that greatly enjoyed it. In this class, instead of projects, we had labs where we created our own capacitive touchscreens, for example. As for content, the class was divided into 2 parts, linear algebra and circuits. For linear algebra, we learned about matrices, linear dependencies, eigenvalues, vectors and spaces, trilaterals, least squares, and match and pursue algorithms. And as for circuits, we learned circuit elements, power voltage analysis, 2D touchscreens, capacitance, Thevenin and Norton equivalents, and op-amps. Of course, everything was explained pretty in detail. I didn't really like this class, but whatever. Next class was a really hard class, probably the hardest one I've ever had. But it was one of the interesting ones, except for the whole cheating scandal that pretty much ruined the experience. But anyways, this class was dense, like really dense, so get ready. It's divided into 2 parts, discrete mathematics and probability theory. So a big overview of the topics discussed in the discrete mathematics realm are sets, propositional logics, proofs, like a lot of proofs, like proofs, induction, stable matching, graph theory, modular arithmetics, public key cryptography, RSA, polynomials, error correcting codes, counting, and computability. Wow. And as for the probability part, conditional probability, inclusion, exclusion, union bound, random variables, expectations, variance, covariance, correlations, concentration inequalities, law of large numbers, hashing, geometric and Poisson distributions, continuous probability, normal distributions, and more concentration inequalities. Okay, let me catch my breath there for a second. And final class was Bioengineering 100, the ethics of engineering. Okay, so this is just an ethics class. There's honestly not much to say about this class. It was very different. Basically, we had ethical scenarios and ethical theories as well as moral principles. It was pretty fun and chill class, definitely a contrast to the other ones I did this semester. If there's anyone still watching, congratulations, that was a lot to take in. You just witnessed my entire first year at Berkeley in hopefully under 5 minutes. I hope this video was somewhat insightful, and if you did enjoy it, feel free to give it a like and comment down below any thoughts or feedback. If you want to see more EECS and other related stuff, subscribe and hit the bell notification to be the first to watch my latest videos. And as always, take care. See ya!